Hello and welcome everyone at this press conference for the presentation of the 2019 World Economic Forum Technology Pioneers. Welcome everyone here in the room and also welcome to everyone who's following at home, wherever you are. It's a very exciting day for us here in Dalian, China. My name is Peter Vanham and I'm joined here today by 4 of these technology pioneers. From my left to my right, we have Daphna Nissenbaum of TIPA, a company based in Israel, and active in the packaging industry. Packaging innovation is what you do. Welcome to you. Then we have Stuart Oda, and he is with Alesca Life. Alesca Life, a company that does indoor farming and is based right here in China. Welcome to you too. And then on the far end of the table is Marilou Jepsen. Marilou Jepsen is a serial entrepreneur, but she's here to present her latest company, Openwater, that does medical imaging. Welcome to all of you. And as I said, we are here joined by these 3 technology pioneers, but there's many more. In total, there are 56 emerging firms that we've selected, and they are all part of the cohort of the 2019 Technology Pioneers. These tech pioneers are at the cutting edge of many industries. And of course, we are very happy that they have joined us for this press conference. And just as we speak, it's exciting that we have a 4th tech pioneer joining us. Welcome, Spencer Deng. You are active with Dorabot in China.
Yep. Thank you.
So, without further ado, let me introduce you to these people and ask them a few questions. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions also later as we go through the room. But let's kick it off with Daphna. Daphna, you work in the packaging innovation. And what you've told me in preparation is that you take your inspiration from nature. You make packaging that is both biodegradable and that disintegrates after use. Could you tell us a little bit more both about the product that you work on and perhaps also why it is so important to have such an offering in the market?
Sure. Let me start with the importance of the product. So every piece of plastic that we've ever manufactured, is still someplace around us, unless it was incinerated. So plastic is such a good material that it remains forever. Forever can be 400, 600, 1,000 of years, we don't really know. We actually have been living the first vial of plastic. So each one of us uses a lot of packaging every day, and each one of those packages actually remains someplace around us. We tackled that problem of the end of life of packaging. So the inspiration was taken from nature. Nature also packed. For example, nature packed the banana and the orange. So if we eat an orange and we throw the peel, the orange peel, to the waste bin, it disintegrates and biodegrades and turns into a fertilizer or a soil. And we invented the same packaging that actually behaves the same as any other organic material. Our packages are fully compostable, which means that post-consumption, they disintegrate, break down to very small parts, and the small parts are eaten by bacteria, and all that happens in compost system within up to 6 months. So just imagine that all the plastic that we have around the world, or all the packages that cannot be recycled, can turn into a soil. And this soil can be used again as a resource. So that's a circular economy approach.
And so you've got offering already on the market. Could you tell us a little bit more about the products that you currently make and where we can find them?
Right. So our business model is to collaborate with third parties. So we manufacture today in Europe, mainly in Germany and Italy. And we deploy our products. We have offices in the UK, in France, in Australia, and in the US. Our plans going forward is, of course, to deploy to the rest of the world. You can find our products in the last 2 years, for example, in the UK, in Waitrose and other places in the supermarket chain. We work with Stella McCartney. We work with Reformation in the US and in Australia, other companies. So mainly food companies and also the apparel industry.
Yeah, it's very good to hear that there are such solutions available. Of course, we know that plastic is a huge problem, and you've told us why. It remains, it has a very long life cycle. You said almost indefinite.
Right.
And we hear terrifying stories about, you know, there being possibly more plastic in the ocean than fish in the coming decades. Can solutions like yours, can they contribute to solving that problem?
Well, they can, but I think the main part is on the public, not to throw, or the governments, not to throw plastic packaging into the sea, or not to dump into the sea. That's the main steps to take. We can contribute to that, but I'd rather not encourage anything like that, but rather behave the right way with packaging. So biodegradable packaging can biodegrade in different conditions, but the main thing is to prevent from sending packaging to the wrong places, like the sea.
Of course, plastic is still in wide use around the world today, and increasingly so really around the world. You're active in many markets in Europe, you said in the US and in Australia. Of course, this is a global problem. Are you optimistic that we are going to be able to address this problem as much of the world continues to develop and grow?
Yeah, yes, I'm always optimistic. But I think in order to make a rapid change, we need to get the governments and legislations and to the right place to adopt solutions. Today there are very strong industries that actually contaminate the world. It's not easy to offer solutions that can actually change the world. But we bring the technology, and we look for governments and officials to help us spread the technology around the world.
Do you know of any, as a final question, do you know of any positive examples, best case examples of countries where they're first along in doing away with plastic?
Yeah. So example, the Netherlands, they actually have been leaders in the last few years. They encourage using compostable solutions. Even in France, there's a law that actually it's mandatory to use for certain applications compostable materials. We see more and more coming. The EU announced that by 2025, all packages have to be either reusable, recyclable, or compostable, which is very good. So we definitely see a change in that direction. We see companies taking steps, although there's no regulatory encouragement, but they do take steps and change the packaging into new technologies like ours. And maybe the most important thing is the public that votes by
with its wallet, as
with
they
its
say.
wallet and legs, and demand for other solutions. So other solutions have to be adopted first by the public, and that will drive all the change. Of course, any change from the government can accelerate the process, but the public eventually is the one that creates or changes history.
Very well, and we're optimistic with you, and of course we support you in your endeavors.
Thank you.
I want to turn now to your colleague Stuart. Stuart, you're active in quite an interesting field as well. Your company does indoor farming, and I've been told that you want to do it in a local way and a data-driven way. Why do we want to have indoor farming, and why do we want it to be data-driven?
Yeah, so I guess just to start out, Alesca's vision is to democratize access to fresh and nutritious food by democratizing the means and the knowledge of food production. And in terms of a lot of the trends that exist, a lot of the demographic trends in the markets that we service, which are emerging markets, there is a huge urbanization that's happening, not just here in China, but also across the Middle East and Africa. And it's projected at over 60%. So the majority of the population will be living inside of these urban city centers. And so one of the things that we want to do is to be able to localize food production where there's a higher concentration of individuals. And so there's a focus for us to be more urban, more local. The data-driven aspect is partly because agriculture's footprint is much larger than most people probably realize. So in any of the markets in which food is being produced locally, 70 to 80% of the water that is being consumed locally is going to one industry, and that's agriculture. And so by making it a little bit more, to be able to collect data in a way that's meaningful allows us to be far more efficient. And that's going to be really, really important going forward as scarcity of resources, of land, of water become a big issue as the global population increases and as these cities become denser.
70% sounds like a lot in terms of the usage of water. Can you give us an idea of when you use best practices of data-driven farming, how much can we actually reduce the footprint of farming?
Yeah, the most extreme example is probably indoor farming, where we can use 100 times less water. So essentially, everything is recycled. You would use essentially 1% of the water, of the equivalent water for a conventional farm.
And why is that?
And that because a lot of it is just either recycled or any of the water that is lost through transpiration is then is condensed and reused. And a lot of times the way that we irrigate right now, because the cost of water is often subsidized, we over-irrigate. And what happens is the water quickly falls to a location where the roots can't really use it. And so, by providing information to the farmers, they can make much, much better decisions, not just around irrigation, but with irrigation comes the use of fertilizers and also pesticides. And, with one of the common misconceptions about farmers is the fact that they may be maybe less sophisticated with technology or with data. But actually, if you give them the right kinds of data in the right way at the right time, they often can make the right decisions almost always. And so our hope is that by providing access to some of the tools that we develop, that we can help them make these better decisions.
Now, if you look at it in that way, you said that you're also active in urban farming. Now, if we look at cities like we're in, other major mega cities, housing prices are already very high. Why would anyone want to produce, in a city when there's so much other space available to do farming?
Yeah. What we found that was interesting being in Beijing is that, so Beijing has over 20 million people living there. And what we're finding is that urban infrastructure is being disrupted in ways that oftentimes we don't realize. And the easiest example is Uber's competitor in China, Didi, has taken hundreds of thousands, even millions of cars off the road. And given the congestion in the urban city center, people are deciding to share a ride rather than drive a car, which means that they don't park anymore. And in the US, I'm not so familiar with the statistics on China, but at least in the US, around 30% of urban developments are parking structures. And we're finding out that prime real estate location underground is actually available. It's a lot cheaper, logistically easier to access, and it's the perfect insulated location for our type of farming to thrive.
Typically, people think that the sun is very important. The sunlight is very important for farming. Yeah. You seem to suggest that it is no longer the case going forward.
Yeah, I mean, so the exciting thing about agriculture is so many of the adjacent industries, and especially industries in technology that previously were not adjacent, related to sensors and LEDs, have matured to a point where food production in this way can be commercially viable in many, many locations around the world. And what's exciting is that the industry is not being complacent. So now they're going from LEDs to lasers, which is another factor of 10 reduction in energy usage, and then even going to fiber optics, where you would channel sunlight during the day directly into an indoor farm. And so there's a lot of research going into ways in which we can reduce the energy intensity, where we can increase the productivity and produce more food on a smaller piece of land closer to people. So it's very exciting.
A lot of people would go to the countryside also to be out there, to be in nature, to have the benefits of being in green. Is that something that you can also foresee with urban farming, that people can go and walk around in the urban farm?
Yeah, so we have a lot of visitors come by. Usually we love to work with elementary schools and also even with companies to show them that the beautiful, sustainable, urban city of the future that we're all talking about requires solutions from all of us, from finance, from transportation, from food production, and that we are one of many solutions to realize that future city. So we bring a lot of individuals into the farm. We want to demystify it. We want to show them that food grown in this way is beautiful. It smells great, tastes great. But also, indoor farming is one of many solutions. It's not going to end world hunger tomorrow, and there will always be a place for outdoor farming, for more conventional forms of farming. And in these situations, we want to take the tools that we develop specifically for indoor farming applications and take the knowledge, the know-how, the software, and the sensors that we've developed, and then apply them to the broader outdoor farming.
Yeah.
So we're trying to find ways in which we can localize food production initially, and then take some of the tools and then make the broader farming agricultural industry more data-driven and a lot more efficient.
Is the future of farming also Asian? Because I know that you're active in Tokyo, Beijing, and Dubai.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of, there's many companies and many universities. There's a huge movement for the application of this technology in developed countries, in Western Europe, in America, in Japan. And we are unique in that we want to apply our technology specifically to emerging market countries. And for us, it's about finding the right partners for us to deploy our technology in ways in which we can add value, not just by producing food locally, but also add value to the local community, whether it's creating jobs or social inclusion. And one of the great things about being an urban farm is that we can hire individuals that traditionally may not be able to engage with agriculture. And one of the things that we're really excited about is working with individuals with mental disabilities to work in our urban farms. So we're setting up an initiative in Dubai at the moment, and we just made our first hire in Beijing, which is very exciting for us.
That's exciting, and we'd love to come and visit, of course, and see your urban farm in Beijing. Thank you, Stuart. And then I want to turn now to Mary Lou. Mary Lou, you're a serial entrepreneur, but again, you're here today to present Openwater, and it's quite a personal story. It's a medical imaging company, and you told us that it is the company that you're working on, Openwater, does medical imaging or is going to do medical imaging in a way that's 1,000 times cheaper than traditional medical imaging. It's also going to be able to do more things. It is going to be smaller. It's going to be portable. Could you tell us a little bit about, why is that important to have those innovations in medical imaging?
Medical imaging is the way we diagnose disease, cancer, heart disease, brain disease. And without that, you don't get a diagnosis often until it's too late or until the patient has to suffer through a year of chemo, which is high pain and suffering, chemo fog for a year, and much more expensive. If we can diagnose disease earlier, we can massively lower the cost and the pain and suffering and get better understanding of disease. So switch from sick care to health care. And so what we're doing is massively lowering the cost of these big medical imaging suites that take up a huge portion of this room. There's been very little improvement in the cost of medical imaging for 3 decades. And my life was saved by an MR scanner 25 years ago. I would have died without that. They found my brain tumor. I got it removed. I finished my PhD. I got $4 million to start my first company. And being an American, I needed to get a job to get health insurance. So I got really good at consumer electronics. Could you imagine in consumer electronics if something cost the same as 25 years ago and was the same size? That would be crazy. So what's happened in consumer electronics is amazing. And we basically use 3 principles. Our bodies are translucent to red light. If you cup your hand around a flashlight outside at night, you can see red light going through. Our bodies are also translucent to gamma rays, X-rays, 2-ton magnetic fields, but guess which one's cheaper? Like by a lot. The problem is the light is scattered by your body. And everybody thought scattering was random, but it's not, with some breakthroughs that are in today's smartphones. Namely, camera chips that are sensitive to the red and near infrared with pixel sizes that are the size of the wavelength of light. That means you can record the waves in the wavelength of light and mathematically descramble what's happening. So I created a company to do that 3 years ago, and now in lab rats, we're exceeding the image quality of MR, of magnetic resonance imaging, of PET, of CT, of all of these huge scanners you lie in hospitals that we call by initials because the technical term is actually really long. I know what they stand for, but it doesn't matter. They're expensive and they're uncomfortable. And so in this process, we realized we could make the system run in reverse and ablate tissue, so do surgery without an incision, potentially cure diabetes because diabetics make insulin. They just can't release it. And so with ultrasonic pings, which we also use, we use camera chips, ultrasonic pings, and red light, we can basically fix the membranes in the cells of the pancreas so that the calcium can go in and the insulin go out. Or even if you get a broken bone, that I saw some research last week that we could actually ultrasonically heal the bone by bursting nano cement to cement the bone completely. So there's some profound implications of this, but I think ultimately it can slash the need for brick and mortar hospitals. If you think of the reason we have hospitals are basically for the scanners and the surgery, we can put that into a system and transform the way we do medicine.
And so just as we had regular telephony previously and an infrastructure to go along with it, and then went to mobile telephony, you could see it happening that we have going to have a mobile clinic going forward.
Or just at home. I mean, at home, certainly it can help with the #1 cause of disability in the developed world, which is determining what kind of stroke the patient just had. And today that means minutes to a scanner.
Yeah.
You get to walk and talk again if they can figure out whether it's a clot-type stroke or a burst-type stroke.
It's life-changing if you can narrow down that time to...
There's a drug you can take,
yeah.
and if it's clot, you can burst it, and vice versa. But if you get the drug wrong, the patient dies. And today that means access to a scanner. So if you live in the rural area, tough luck. You're not going to walk or talk. So it's like an immediate change that we can make.
And then tell us a little bit about...
But in addition, we leverage the tools of our time, AI and machine learning, which are up to snuff for diagnosing images. And so you can imagine, seriously, a hospital in a box.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that's very exciting about this new technology you said is that it can be up to 1,000 times cheaper. Tell us, to put that in perspective, tell us what a typical scan could cost now and to what kind of degree it can be reduced going forward.
So at scale, as we get into volume production, because the cost of something is related to the volume. So that qualifier, yeah, today a medical imaging scan is about $1,000. That's average in the world. The country I'm from is higher for reasons we're not going to get into, but we're talking about lowering that cost to $1 or the cost of a cell phone, and the device itself to be the cost of your smartphone at scale.
It all sounds very exciting. Maybe one caveat, one skeptic might ask, medical technology innovation. From Silicon Valley, we've heard that story before, and it didn't end well. Could you tell us why perhaps we see now that innovation is possible to that degree in the medical industry as well? And that it's possible to have the same breakthroughs that we've had in other industries also in the medical industry.
So a lot of medical imaging, I think it was in magnetic resonance imaging was invented at Harvard, and it did go well. So I don't know which company you're referring to. In terms of innovation in medical, it's highly regulated. I have some background in scaling products at scale, simultaneously shipping in 200 countries. I co-founded a not-for-profit called One Laptop Per Child, which catalyzed $30 billion of revenue for our for-profit partners and became the fastest growing consumer electronic category ever recorded up till that time. And here's the thing is, one of the exciting things about getting to work with a forum and having this dialogue with lots of countries is the future belongs to those who want it. And so obviously we show it's safe and so forth, but right now, 3/4 of humanity lacks access to high quality medical imaging. And so there's an interesting dialogue to have on what we want healthcare to be in each country in the world.
Yeah, it shows the power of technology. If it's applied to things, it can really change people's lives in a positive way, and I wish you all success with it. And then finally, I want to turn to Spencer. Spencer, welcome. You work for Dorabot, and you're also based in China. Something very exciting, you use AI, artificial intelligence, to provide robotic solutions in the logistics industry. Could you tell us a little bit more about what your company does?
So I used to work for UPS. The reason why I wanted to work in the logistics field because I feel like a lot of work that in the whole process can actually be more efficient at the same time, more harmless for people to work on if we use robotics or AI. And I would think up until almost recently, AI or machine learning is allowing those potential to be possible until today, right? Like we're working on a lot of applications like from unloading, from the inbounds, sorting applications for packages, and all the way down to loading outbounds, packages, e-commerce players. One of the very interesting things we are seeing in the industry is that because internet is evolving almost like in a speed that we cannot imagine, especially in China.
Right.
Today, believe me or not, like every day we actually have 100 plus million packages flowing inside the country, and this is just China.
Incredible scale of
Yep.
e-commerce.
Yep, like imagine in Amazon, right? The US is kind of like the same thing. So those kind of volume, the size of the package volume has been reaching a level that maybe human being cannot deal with it efficiently, and younger generation doesn't want to get involved too much into those positions anymore, which you still need to keep very good consumer experience, right?
Yeah.
Like in China, you might heard about we don't have next day or like 2 days delivery. We want it right now, like really right now. Few hours, right? It's already here. We feel it really normal, but in the US, you still have the 2 days or 3 days delivery.
Yeah,
But
I think Amazon is going to 1 day delivery now. That's the big innovation in the US.
Exactly. So
Next day.
Amazon is trying to like prioritize everything, prioritize the consumer experience upon everything, which drives all the competitors or all the vendors get to the speed, right? Every next day delivery or even a couple hours delivery. With that, I would say robotics and AI is actually playing a really big role in execution as well as planning perspective.
Yeah. And so you provide solutions for that. Of course, when people think about new technologies in labor-intensive industries, oftentimes they will also worry, is this going to take away jobs? And you've countered that already by saying, well, as a matter of fact, here in China, a lot of people don't want to work in that industry. What are your perspectives on the future of jobs when it comes to logistics? And should we think of it as a good thing if jobs disappear, or should we try to alleviate that?
So we don't have a specific number that say it's going to increase job or it's going to decrease the job volume. But we do see that every spring festivals, that after that, the whole month, the whole package business is like done, right? Because people going home,
quit their jobs and
quit their
don't wanna come
jobs,
back.
that they don't want to go back into manufacturing as well as the warehouse anymore. But you still need to, you still have many people purchasing from the e-commerce. So actually those warehouses like almost like packed, right, for months until they got cleared out, right? But with robotics, that you can easily deal with it because continuously working like 24 hours.
They won't quit because they went to the family for Spring Festival, of course.
Well, family is the best, right? So they have to go home to stay with the family for at least 1 month. It's not a big ask. But the other things that we're seeing is actually for those positions dealing with heavy packages, right? A lot of packages, frequency, it might not be good for the body or human body. Human body is not designed for taking packages, right? When we use a lot of technology, yeah, exactly, like robotics or AI planning, back in the office, we actually need a lot more people to supervise the whole scenario working, the operational part. So we believe that with that infrastructure of AI and robotic built into operational scenario, we would actually create way more job back in the office, people sitting, playing with the computers to see what is right, what is wrong, and how to actually optimize it.
Yeah, and that's of course a cycle of technology that at some point it will then again create jobs, different jobs that we cannot yet foresee. One final question, and I want to turn to the audience for 1 or 2 questions. You are mostly active in China right now. You explained why, because the biggest demand for logistics shipping is here. Do you foresee that these technologies can be applicable elsewhere, and what would be the markets that you would look at?
So the interesting thing about us is that we actually have a very international team based in Shenzhen. We do have an office in Atlanta and Brisbane, Australia. Most of our business before almost at the beginning of the year, is actually in the US. So right now we are trying to expand the applications into mainland China as well as Japan and also Australia. So even though we are at the very first beginning, I would say early part of the journey, we're already pretty international. So we see the China opportunity almost equal to the international one that we see, because internet here is pretty big and really mature, so that e-commerce, even Jack Ma was talking about, it's already a legacy industry, right?
Yeah.
So, but the growth is still tremendous every year, driving the volume across the country in a way that people cannot imagine. It keep surprising the whole market.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, we hope that afterwards you'll be able to talk to Daphne to make sure that the packaging that you use is sustainable.
Use the right materials.
Yes, absolutely. That concludes the formal part of the press conference. I want to now allow for a question or two from the audience, and afterwards I hope that some of us can stay for more questions with the audience. So we'll have a look. Yeah, over here. If you can state your name and the company you work for.
Okay, I speak Chinese.
Very well.
我是那个就是
I'm from China Development Media. I'm a journalist. You are talking about new technologies, and when you apply these technologies to the market, how do you collect feedback from consumers? Thank you very much.
And I think that that question can be answered by whomever wants to answer that question.
Sorry, the question was, how do we collect feedback from customers?
Yes.
Collect feedback.
I mean, for us, it's all about community engagement. So we've had several thousand people come through our farms in Beijing and also in Dubai. And we want the ultimate user, or the consumer, to have a say in the kind of food that they want to eat, the things that they love. And so we work with chefs to try to customize some of the food that we can produce. And what's interesting is, without changing any of the genetics, we can simulate 4 natural disasters, essentially, inside of our farm. So darkness, extreme darkness, floods, droughts, and high winds. And by manipulating these things, we can actually change the flavor profile of the food. And so what's really interesting is we can personalize and customize food based on the, what our customers value, which is very exciting for us. And then it really just comes down to how do they want, we want to create a channel where individuals create a relationship with the food that they eat. Right now, food is anonymous, much like packaging.
Right.
So it's very easy to throw away. You have no relationship with it. And so what we try to do is try to bridge the gap. And so we don't want to just create an industrial farm. We want to create a farm that is socially inclusive, but also allows us to really create that relationship that has existed 10,000 years ago when agriculture and food and animals were domesticated.
Very personal.
Right.
Okay, very well. I hope that answers your question, but I'm sure we'll have time after the press conference is over to answer more of your questions. This concludes the press conference for the launch of the Technology Pioneers 2019 class of the World Economic Forum. You can read all about it on our website, weforum.org. You can find a press release, and you can find a microsite with a description of all 56 technology pioneers. Thank you all for being here, and have a good conference.